Three young aliens thought they were just earning credits carrying bags for a wealthy human. But when they opened one, they found something that shouldn't exist in this galaxy. Their mother's reaction the next morning changed everything they thought they knew about interspecies relations. The three Cathar brothers moved through the starlit corridors of the orbital starport, their multifaceted eyes scanning for any sign of quick work. Credits were tight this cycle, and their mother's warnings about off-world employers echoed in their minds like a faint alarm. The youngest's bioluminescent markings pulsed with a soft blue rhythm, each flicker matching his nervous energy as they watched traders and smugglers pass through the customs gates. A human in immaculate spacer's robes approached them, the fabric shimmering with embedded security fibers that caught the harsh port lighting. His smile showed too many perfect teeth. "Need carriers?" he asked, his voice smooth like polished metal. "3 containers to my transport. Simple work for strong lads." He named a figure that made the eldest brother's antennae twitch. Triple the standard rate for basic hauling work. The middle brother exchanged a weighted glance with his siblings. This was either incredibly good luck or something much darker. The human's eyes kept drifting to the youngest's glowing patterns, tracking the light shifts with a focus that felt more like measurement than curiosity. "What's in the cases?" the eldest asked, his mandibles clicking with suspicion. The human's smile never wavered. "Cultural artifacts. Very fragile. Requires careful handling." His answer came too fast, too polished, like he'd given it many times before. He gestured toward 3 metallic containers waiting against a bulkhead. They were larger than standard cargo boxes, with seals that glowed with containment fields. When the brothers lifted the first case, the weight felt wrong. Not the solid heft of machinery or the balanced load of trade goods, but something that shifted inside, something that pulsed against their grips. A faint hum vibrated through their carapaces, a rhythm that resonated in their very bones. Across the galaxy, exploitation often starts like this: overpayment for simple tasks, the first step in a much darker transaction. The human watched them test the weight, his eyes now fully fixed on the youngest brother's luminescent patterns. He wasn't just hiring laborers, he was selecting specific biological traits. The brothers understood then that their species was the qualification, not their strength. The credits glowed in the human's payment scanner, a sum that would cover their family's needs for months. The eldest met his brother's eyes, saw the same wariness in their postures, the same calculation. The hum from the containers seemed to deepen, a vibration that spoke of things sealed away from the light. They took the job. The credits were too much to refuse, the need too pressing. The human's smile widened as he handed over the advance payment, his eyes still tracing the patterns on the youngest brother's carapace. The boys followed the human through Docking Bay 7, their antennae picking up the scent of ozone and recent engine burns. His ship waited in the shadowed berth, not a merchant freighter or luxury yacht, but a Corsair-class scout vessel with military-grade modifications. The angular hull showed recent welds along its starboard side, the metal still discolored from emergency repairs. Fresh blast scoring marked the armor plating near the engine nacelles, blackened streaks that spoke of recent combat. His flawless spacer robes whispered against the deck plates, each step precise and controlled. But his boots told another story. The grip patterns on the soles were worn nearly smooth, the kind of wear that comes from years of combat footing and emergency maneuvers, not luxury travel. One hand never left his hip, resting near a concealed weapon bulge under the fabric. He spoke as they walked, his knowledge of Cathar culture unnervingly specific. He mentioned their hive cycles, their feeding rituals, even the meaning behind the youngest brother's specific bioluminescent pattern configuration. No casual visitor to their sector possessed that depth of understanding. The middle brother checked the ship's registry codes against his wrist comp. They didn't match any known trading consortium or corporate registry. The codes were ghost entries, fabricated identifiers that shifted even as he watched. Wealthy interlopers often use cultural knowledge as a manipulation tool, disarming indigenous species with false familiarity. This human knew exactly which customs to reference, which phrases would create false trust. He called the containers biological specimens when the eldest brother asked again about contents, but refused to name the origin species or world. His answers circled around direct questions like a predator assessing weak points. The brothers noted the fresh combat damage along the hull, recent particle weapon impacts near the communications array, emergency patch jobs on the ventral plating. This ship had been in a firefight within the last solar cycle. The human's posture never relaxed, his eyes constantly scanning the docking bay while maintaining that polished smile. He wasn't some wealthy collector or artifact dealer. This was something else entirely. The way he moved, the ship he flew, the combat damage he hadn't bothered to properly conceal. He operated in shadows and conflict. The middle brother's mandibles tightened as he realized they weren't dealing with a merchant. They were dealing with a professional. As they loaded the final container into the ship's cargo hold, the human's comlink chimed with a priority alert. The screen flashed with encryption patterns too complex for standard civilian use. His smile finally dropped as he read the message, his eyes going cold and focused. The change was immediate. The polished charm vanished, replaced by a chilling efficiency. He glanced at the brothers with new calculation, his hand moving fully to his concealed weapon. The docking bay seemed to grow colder, the ambient sounds of the starport fading into background noise. The youngest brother's manipulator claw snagged on a concealed latch as he shifted the final container into position. A hidden panel slid open with a soft click that echoed in the ship's cargo bay. The vibration that pulsed through his grip changed instantly. No longer the steady hum of machinery, but a fluctuating rhythm that resonated deep in his carapace. It pulsed against his nerve clusters in a pattern his body recognized instinctively. His antennae stiffened as the frequency registered. This wasn't random vibration. It matched the precise distress signal their species emitted when injured or captured. The rhythmic pattern repeated every 17 seconds, the exact interval used in hive emergency protocols. The brothers froze, their communication pheromones flooding the air with alarm signals. The eldest shook his head in warning, his mandibles clicking the universal sign for danger. The youngest ignored the silent command. His curiosity overrode caution as he peered into the narrow opening. The interior glowed with soft blue light, revealing not artifacts or trade goods but organic tissue suspended in nutrient gel. Thick, transparent fluid filled the container, swirling around masses of living matter that pulsed with faint bioluminescence. The gel smelled of sterilization chemicals and something else, the distinct scent of Cathar biology. Galactic law strictly prohibits interspecies biological trafficking for good reason. The risks of cross-species contamination, ethical violations, and genetic weapons development made such trade punishable by permanent exile from civilized space. Yet here they were, looking at what could only be described as harvested tissue. The middle brother joined the inspection, his specialized eyes analyzing the cellular structures. The tissue showed distinct Cathar genetic markers, the specific protein configurations unique to their species. Then he saw the patterns. The bioluminescent cells weren't just random clusters. They formed the precise constellation pattern unique to royal lineage. Only a dozen families in their entire species carried that specific genetic signature. This wasn't just stolen biological material. This was targeted harvesting of their most protected bloodlines. The containers hummed with the same rhythm as their own circulatory systems, a mocking imitation of living beings. The human wasn't transporting artifacts or trade goods. He was moving stolen genetic material, likely acquired through illegal harvesting operations on frontier worlds. The pieces clicked into place, the excessive payment, the interest in their biological traits, the military-grade ship. They were assisting in something far darker than simple smuggling. They scrambled to reseal the container, their claws fumbling with the hidden latch. The magnetic seals clicked back into place just as heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor. The human appeared in the cargo bay entrance, his polished smile gone. His eyes swept over them, noting their tense postures, the lingering alarm pheromones in the air. His hand went to the weapon concealed beneath his robes. His expression had shifted from false warmth to cold assessment. The friendly merchant persona vanished, replaced by something calculated and dangerous. He studied them like specimens, his gaze lingering on each brother's bioluminescent patterns as if mentally cataloging their value. The air in the cargo bay grew heavy with unspoken threat. The human's hand emerged from his robes holding not the promised credit chips but something heavier. The bonus payment glowed with a corporate insignia instead of standard Galactic Financial Authority markings. The brothers recognized the symbol immediately, Xenogen Corporation, banned in 7 sectors for illegal genetic experimentation and ethical violations. Their containment facilities had been exposed in the last parliamentary inquiry for harvesting indigenous species without consent. He extended the chips with a new smile, this one colder. "For your discretion," he said, his eyes scanning their bioluminescent patterns like a collector assessing rare art. "There will be more work available for specimens with your unique qualities." The phrasing hung in the air between them. Not workers, not carriers, but specimens. Illicit operations often use corporate front payment systems to maintain plausible deniability, creating layers of separation between the crime and the corporation funding it. The middle brother's wrist comp vibrated with a silent alert as he analyzed the chips. The financial signature traced back through 3 shell companies before landing squarely in Xenogen's restricted accounts. The transaction carried encryption tags used exclusively for biological acquisition programs. They weren't being paid for their labor. They were being cataloged as potential genetic sources, their payment processing serving as initial registration in some hidden database. During the handoff, the human's other hand moved subtly at his side. A concealed scanner built into his sleeve captured high-resolution images of their bioluminescent patterns, the device humming softly as it recorded genetic markers visible through their carapaces. The brothers felt the scan like a faint static charge across their skin, a violation that made their antennae flatten in instinctive rejection. The job was never about carrying containers. The physical labor served as pretext for biological assessment, a way to evaluate potential donors under controlled conditions. The excessive payment wasn't generosity, it was acquisition cost for premium genetic material. They were being recruited, their DNA the product and their bodies the delivery system. The human's laughter followed them as they backed away, the sound echoing in the metallic corridor. It wasn't the friendly chuckle from earlier, but something darker, the amusement of a hunter watching prey walk into a trap. They turned and moved quickly through the starport's neon-lit thoroughfares, the corporate credit chips burning in the eldest brother's grip like contaminated objects. The corridors seemed to twist differently now. The familiar starport transformed into a hunting ground. Every human face they passed became potentially dangerous, every corporate uniform a threat. The payment chips in their possession didn't feel like currency anymore. They felt like tracking beacons, their financial signatures broadcasting their location to whoever monitored Xenogen's acquisitions network. They needed to get home, to their mother's protective presence before whatever contamination they'd encountered could follow them deeper into their lives. The humans' final words echoed in their minds, a promise that felt more like a sentence. The brothers entered their hive cluster through the secondary environmental lock, the familiar scent of recycled air and biogel barely masking the new chemical traces clinging to their carapaces. Their mother stood over the central navigation console, her multifaceted eyes reflecting star charts that glowed with tactical overlays. She didn't look up as they entered, but her antennae stiffened immediately, rotating toward them with precise movement. Her receptors flared open, sampling the air around them. The change in her posture was instantaneous. Her shoulders tightened, her claws extended slightly, and a low-frequency warning hum vibrated through the chamber floor. "You carry contamination," she stated, her voice losing its usual warmth. "Xenogen biocontainment seals. Their chemical signature is unmistakable." She turned from the star charts, her eyes now fixed on them with an intensity that made the youngest brother's bioluminescent patterns flicker defensively. "Tell me everything. From the beginning. Leave nothing out." Her mandibles clicked softly, a sound that usually signaled mild irritation but now carried generations of encoded warning. Maternal protective instincts in insectoid species include chemical threat detection capabilities, far beyond other races. Their biology evolved to protect the hive from invisible dangers. The brothers recounted the job. The human, the containers. When they described the rhythmic vibration from the cases, her mandibles clicked again, this time with clear alarm. She moved closer, her own antennae now vibrating in sympathetic resonance. "That frequency, describe it exactly." The middle brother hummed the pattern, replicating the 17-second interval they'd felt through their carapaces. Her multifaceted eyes seemed to fracture the light differently, each lens focusing on a separate aspect of the memory. "That is no mechanical vibration. That is the distress signal used by royal lineage carriers when captured. 3 hive members disappeared last cycle from the northern cluster. Their final transmission matched that exact pattern." She moved to a comms panel, pulling up records of missing persons reports that glowed with official seals. "This isn't the first time wealthy humans have targeted our clan," she said, her voice dropping to a frequency that vibrated through the chamber walls. 20 cycles ago, my own sister took a similar job, high payment for simple work. She never returned. The investigation found traces of the same corporate signatures. Xenogen operates where law cannot reach. She pointed to the decontamination chamber. Strip and cleanse. Every surface, every joint, every respiratory port. The chemicals they use can linger for cycles, marking you for their scanners. Her orders came with military precision, each word carrying the weight of experience they'd never seen in their mother before. As they moved toward the cleansing unit, she approached a section of wall that appeared seamless. Her claws entered a complex sequence against the surface, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing interfaces far more advanced than standard Hive technology. "While you cleanse, I will access the forbidden sequences. The Hive memory holds answers we stopped seeking generations ago." The panel glowed with soft blue light, symbols scrolling too fast for normal comprehension. The brothers entered the decontamination chamber as their mother began interfacing with the ancient system, her body posture shifting into something they'd never witnessed, a focused, technical precision that transformed her from protective parent to something else entirely. The cleansing mist began to flow, carrying neutralizers designed to break down corporate tracking compounds. Through the transparent wall, they watched their mother's antennae connect directly with the interface, her body humming with energy transfer as forbidden knowledge began to flow. Her antennae made direct contact with the Hive memory crystal, the interface humming with ancient energy. Blue light erupted from the central node, projecting holographic records that filled the chamber with shimmering timelines. The images showed incident reports spanning generations, missing Cathar youth, mysterious job offers, containers that hummed with familiar rhythms. Each case glowed with official seals and forgotten investigation codes. The same human appeared in records 50 years old, then 70, a century. His face remained unchanged, the same sharp features and calculating eyes watching from surveillance captures and witness sketches. The only differences were clothing styles and background technology advancing around his static form. Advanced human augmentation can create functional immortality through biological renewal, but the cost involves constant genetic replenishment from external sources. The record showed a clear pattern emerging. Wealthy humans always appeared after political upheavals, when Cathar society focused on reconstruction rather than security. They targeted youth from specific genetic lines, always offering work that seemed too good to refuse. The stolen genetic material served one purpose according to the Hive memory logs. Human lifespan extension through hybrid vigor required fresh Cathar DNA, particularly from royal lineages with unique telomere regeneration sequences. The crystal displayed biological schematics, showing how their genetic material integrated into human cellular structures, reversing aging damage and enhancing physical capabilities. Each theft corresponded with the disappearance of promising young Cathar, their genetic potential harvested to sustain wealthy humans who valued longevity over ethics. This human wasn't just a trafficker moving illegal goods. The crystal cross-referenced his image with historical databases, showing the same face appearing at intervals across centuries. He moved through time unchanged while those around him aged and died, a genetic vampire feeding on their species to maintain his own existence. The Hive memory calculated the probable lifespan extension from each container's volume, enough genetic material to sustain a human for decades of additional life. The crystal's final revelation made her mandibles go still. Projected data streams showed the entire pattern, the systematic harvesting that spanned their recorded history. It wasn't random predation or occasional exploitation. The records indicated coordinated operations targeting specific genetic markers, careful breeding of certain family lines to enhance desirable traits, even manipulation of Cathar political events to create optimal conditions for acquisition. Their people weren't just being victimized, they were being farmed like agricultural products, their biology cultivated and harvested across generations. The holograms displayed planetary maps with glowing markers indicating concentration of royal genetic lines, harvest frequency statistics, even predicted yield projections for future cycles. The cold efficiency of the data left no room for doubt. This was industrial-scale biological farming disguised as chance encounters and employment opportunities. The wealthy human they'd met represented just one collector in a system that viewed their entire species as renewable medical resources. The crystal's light intensified, projecting the ultimate truth their people had tried to forget. Generations of warnings buried as folklore, disappearances explained as accidents, the constant pressure on certain bloodlines to produce children with specific traits, all part of the same system. Their biology had become commodity, their existence reduced to medical utility for beings who saw them as nothing more than biological hardware. The farming operation extended beyond their world, beyond their sector, involving networks that reached into the highest levels of galactic power. The hive memory crystal projected biological schematics that glowed with intricate detail. Cathar DNA contained unique telomere regeneration sequences that human science had never replicated. Their cellular structures naturally repaired chromosomal damage that accumulated with aging, a property corporate laboratories had coveted since first contact. The holograms displayed research documents showing decades of failed attempts to synthesize the effect, always returning to the same conclusion. Only fresh, Cathar genetic material provided the desired longevity enhancement. Human corporations had pursued this biological property through legal channels initially, offering trade agreements and research partnerships. When the Cathar refused, citing ethical concerns and cultural prohibitions, the approach shifted. The wealthy human belonged to a cabal that traded exclusively in longevity treatments, operating outside galactic law to acquire what couldn't be obtained through legitimate means. Their clients included powerful figures who valued extended lifespans over legal compliance, creating a black market for genetic material that functioned like a shadow healthcare system. Real-world bioprospecting often targets indigenous communities for unique biological properties, treating living beings as natural resources rather than people. The holograms showed how the containers held more than just genetic material. Integrated into the nutrient gel were genetically tailored plagues designed to weaken hive immunity systems. The pathogens targeted specific Cathar biological markers, creating controlled outbreaks that would make entire clusters more vulnerable to future harvesting operations. The rhythmic hum they'd felt wasn't just distress signals, it was the vibration of automated injection systems, releasing containment agents into the environment. The payment chips contained another layer of threat. As the holograms magnified the microscopic level, they revealed tracking nanites that had already detached from the credit chips and spread through their hive. The tiny machines moved through ventilation systems, attaching to surfaces and monitoring equipment, creating a detailed map of their living space and defensive capabilities. The nanites reported back to Xenogen's operations center, transmitting real-time data about cluster layout, population density, and security measures. The job was merely delivery. The real contamination operated on multiple levels: biological weapons to weaken their defenses, tracking systems to map their vulnerabilities, and genetic assessment to identify premium targets. The brothers had carried their own family's vulnerabilities into their home, thinking they were earning credits while actually delivering the tools for their own harvesting. The human's interest in their bioluminescent patterns suddenly made terrible sense. He was grading their genetic quality like assessing livestock. Their mother's initial shock hardened into grim determination as the full scope revealed itself. Her claws moved across the control panel with new purpose, activating quarantine protocols that hadn't been used in generations. Barrier fields hummed to life between chambers. Atmospheric scrubbers began cycling at emergency rates, and biocontainment fields glowed along all access points. The hive memory continued displaying data, showing how each element connected into a comprehensive harvesting system designed to maximize yield while minimizing resistance. She understood now why certain families received better education opportunities, why medical services focused on specific genetic lines, why political appointments always seemed to favor those with desirable biological markers. The entire society had been shaped by external pressures they never recognized, their development guided toward producing optimal genetic material for harvest. The quarantine protocols engaged fully, isolating contaminated sections and activating countermeasures against both biological and technological threats. The home they thought was their sanctuary had become the front line in a conflict they never knew existed. Her claws moved across the hive memory interface, tracing financial pathways that twisted through corporate structures like maze designs. The human connected to Xenogen, but Xenogen answered to a holding company registered in a tax-free orbital station. That company reported to another entity based in a diplomatic zone, which ultimately answered to a board of directors that included sitting galactic senators. The operation had legal protection woven into its very structure, sanctioned at levels that made resistance seem impossible. Real-world exploitation networks often involve complicit government officials who provide legal cover for operations that would otherwise face consequences. The holographic display showed official seals approving research initiatives and cultural exchange programs that served as fronts for the harvesting operation. Permits signed by senators whose campaigns received Xenogen funding. Export licenses approved by officials with stock options in the parent company. The system protected itself through layers of legality and influence. The human wasn't some rogue operator working outside the system. He represented the visible tip of a fully sanctioned program, his actions authorized by people who made galactic law. The records showed official designations for their hive cluster not as a residential area but as a resource management zone scheduled for population relocation to advanced research facilities. The terminology hid brutal reality behind bureaucratic language. Their home had been classified as agricultural land, its inhabitants as harvestable resources. The brothers watched the data flow across the displays, understanding dawning with cold clarity. The job offer, the containers, the excessive payment, it all formed part of an acquisition protocol. They hadn't just carried unknown cargo. They had delivered their own family's death warrant, activating the final phase of an operation years in planning. The nanites from the payment chips now provided real-time intelligence about their defensive capabilities, their numbers, even their daily routines. Xenogen knew exactly when to strike for maximum efficiency. Their mother's mandibles tightened as she accessed deeper protocols. The emergency systems hadn't been activated since the Hive Wars, their existence known only to certain bloodlines. She entered command sequences that made the crystal glow with intense blue light, symbols scrolling too fast for normal reading. The walls of their hive cluster hummed with awakening systems, hidden panels sliding open to reveal technology far beyond standard civilian capabilities. She understood now why certain families received protection, why royal lineages had survived despite being primary targets. The emergency protocols represented generations of preparation, each upgrade responding to new threats, each improvement based on lessons from previous encounters. The system knew Xenogen's tactics, their technology, their preferred methods of operation. It had been designed specifically to counter this kind of threat, updated across cycles as the corporation evolved its approaches. The brothers watched their mother transform from concerned parent to tactical commander, her posture shifting into someone who understood combat and strategy. She issued commands to the hive systems, activating defensive measures that made the air crackle with energy. Shield generators hummed to life around their perimeter. Sensory arrays began scanning for approaching threats, and weapon systems emerged from concealed compartments. The home they knew became a fortress in moments, every system designed for one purpose: survival against overwhelming odds. The reality settled over them like physical weight. Their simple job had triggered events that would determine whether their species remained free or became property. The humans' laughter echoed in their memories, now understood as the amusement of someone who knew exactly how the system worked. They stood in the awakening command center, watching their mother coordinate defenses against an enemy that operated with full legal authority. The emergency protocols glowed with readiness, waiting for the confrontation they all knew was coming. Their mother's antennae retracted from the hive memory crystal, the blue light fading from her eyes as she turned to face her sons. Her posture shifted, the familiar maternal curve of her shoulders straightening into something more rigid, more authoritative. "I was chief bioengineer of Cathar Prime," she said, her voice carrying a resonance they'd never heard before. "The highest-ranking scientific position in our government." The revelation hung between them, rewriting everything they knew about their quiet life in the hive cluster. She had abandoned that position 17 cycles ago, after discovering the longevity conspiracy during routine genetic database analysis. The research protocols showed anomalies, specific genetic sequences being flagged for archiving that matched missing persons reports. Her security clearance allowed her to trace the data flows to off-world corporations, to see how deeply the corruption reached into their own government. Whistleblowers often sacrifice everything to protect vulnerable communities, walking away from power and prestige to defend those who cannot defend themselves. Her eyes focused on her sons with new intensity. "I've been protecting you because you carry pure royal DNA, the most valuable strain they seek." Their bioluminescent patterns suddenly made sense not as simple biology, but as targets painted on their bodies. The specific configuration of lights across their carapaces represented genetic purity that corporate laboratories would pay fortunes to acquire. She had hidden them here, in this seemingly ordinary hive cluster, because their very existence made them the most hunted beings in their genetic line. She demonstrated her hidden capabilities with a subtle release of specialized pheromones. The air around her shimmered slightly, and combat protocols activated throughout the chamber. Hidden panels slid open to reveal weapon emplacements, shield generators hummed to life, and tactical displays flickered across surfaces that moments before appeared to be simple walls. Her movements became precise, economical, the trained actions of someone who understood violence not as theory but as practiced skill. The hive cluster wasn't their home. It was a fortified safe house she designed herself during her tenure as chief bioengineer, constructed using technology meant for planetary defense systems. Every wall contained armored plating. Every corridor could be sealed into independent containment zones. The very atmosphere could be flooded with combat pheromones that enhanced Cathar abilities while suppressing intruders. She had built this place knowing this day would eventually come, preparing for the moment the hunters found her children. Their mother wasn't just a concerned parent trying to protect her family. She was a tactical genius who had been hiding them from galactic-scale hunters for their entire lives. The simple meals, the careful budgeting, the avoidance of official registries, all part of an elaborate operational security protocol designed to keep 3 priceless genetic specimens off corporate scanning networks. She moved to a section of wall that appeared seamless, her claws entering a complex code sequence. The wall dissolved into light, revealing armories containing technology far beyond standard Cathar capabilities. Military-grade plasma rifles rested in charging cradles, combat exoskeletons hung in maintenance frames, and sensor jamming equipment glowed with active status lights. These weren't civilian defense tools but professional military hardware, the kind used by special operations units and planetary security forces. She had access to systems that shouldn't exist outside government armories, technology that marked her as someone with connections far beyond their isolated life. The brothers stared at the revealed arsenal, understanding dawning that their mother had been preparing for this confrontation since before they were born. Every lesson about caution, every warning about strangers, every seemingly paranoid security measure suddenly made terrible sense. She hadn't been overprotective. She'd been running a continuous defensive operation against an enemy they never knew existed. The weight of her secret life settled around them as she began distributing weapons, her movements efficient and practiced. The strange sensation began subtly, a fog creeping through their neural pathways. The brothers found themselves agreeing with each other too easily, their usual sibling arguments fading into unnatural harmony. The youngest noticed it first. His bioluminescent patterns flickered with unusual regularity, losing their spontaneous rhythm. Memory gaps appeared where there should have been clear recall of recent events. They all experienced a growing urge to comply with suggestions, even when those suggestions contradicted their instincts. Their mother's bioscanner revealed the truth. Second-stage nanites from the payment chips had integrated with their circulatory systems, targeting aggression hormones and neural receptors. The microscopic machines rewrote synaptic connections, suppressing independent thought and enhancing compliance responses. Real-world chemical submission technologies exist for population control, designed to create docile populations through biological manipulation. These nanites operated on similar principles but with far more precision, targeting specific genetic markers to create perfect donors, cooperative, obedient specimens that wouldn't resist harvesting. Her emergency protocols included countermeasures she'd developed during her time as chief bioengineer. The treatment chamber hummed with energy as she prepared the genetic rewriting sequence, "This will hurt," she warned them, her mandibles tight with concern. "The process fights the nanites at cellular level. There's risk of permanent damage to your bioluminescent capabilities." The brothers exchanged glances, understanding the cost. Their patterns weren't just beautiful. They represented genetic purity, family lineage, cultural identity. Losing them meant losing part of what made them Cathar. They entered the chamber together, the air thickening with energy fields that made their carapaces vibrate. The treatment felt like lightning across their nerve clusters, a painful rewriting of their genetic code that fought the nanites' influence. Their bioluminescent patterns flared unpredictably, colors shifting through unnatural spectrums as the battle raged inside them. The youngest cried out as his patterns temporarily went dark, the blackout lasting 3 terrifying seconds before flickering back to life. The human didn't just want their DNA. He wanted to transform them into willing participants in their own harvesting, creatures so fundamentally altered they would gladly offer themselves for experimentation. The compliance urges weren't side effects. They were the primary objective, creating perfect donors who would cooperate with their own dissection. The revelation hit them even through the neural fog, a moment of clarity that made the eldest snarl with defiance despite the nanites' influence. As the treatment reached its peak, the nanites began dying in waves. Their mother monitored the process through bioscanners, administering precise energy pulses to accelerate the breakdown. The brothers experienced each death as a tiny neural shock, a momentary clarity followed by returning rage. The fog lifted in patches, memories returning with brutal intensity. The humans' calculating eyes, the container's rhythmic hum, the realization they were being assessed like livestock. The final nanite die-off felt like emerging from deep water. Clarity returned with the force of a plasma blast, their thoughts sharp and unfiltered. The compliance urges vanished, replaced by pure, undiluted rage. Their bioluminescent patterns stabilized but carried permanent changes. Deeper colors, slower pulses, a visible record of the genetic battle they'd endured. The brothers stood together in the treatment chamber, their bodies humming with residual energy and renewed purpose. The humans' attempt to remake them had failed, but the experience left them fundamentally altered, cleansed of external control but scarred by the violation. The brothers stood motionless as the hive memory displayed the full scope of their mistake. Their simple job hadn't just endangered their family, it threatened their entire species. The holographic records showed clan after clan that disappeared following similar encounters. Entire genetic lines wiped from existence, their disappearance explained as migration or accidents. The evidence glowed in the chamber, a gallery of lost faces and unanswered inquiries. The human's ship remained in high orbit, its scanners sweeping the planet below. They could see its sensor patterns on the tactical display, narrow band frequencies targeting specific genetic signatures. Royal lineage markers glowed like beacons on the map, each pulse representing a potential donor identified for harvesting. The ship's weapon system showed active status, ready to enforce compliance if needed. Moments of realization often transform ordinary individuals. The brothers felt that shift occur simultaneously, a silent understanding passing between them without words. Their perspective changed from victims assessing damage to defenders evaluating threats. The eldest's hands clenched, his combat training surfacing after lying dormant for cycles. The middle brother's eyes tracked data streams with new analytical intensity. The youngest's empathic senses expanded beyond family concern to species-level protection. They combined their unique capabilities without discussion. The eldest accessed weapon systems his mother had hidden, his strength perfect for handling the heavier plasma rifles. The middle brother interfaced with scanning technology, his intelligence deciphering encrypted corporate communications. The youngest focused on the human's emotional patterns, his empathy detecting subtle shifts in intention and confidence that technology might miss. Using their mother's advanced tracking systems, they traced the human's next target. The scanner locked onto a hive cluster 3 sectors away, their cousin's family. The same genetic markers that made them valuable appeared in their cousin's biometric data, glowing brighter than other signatures on the display. The human had identified them as secondary targets, a backup acquisition in case the primary operation failed. Scheduling data showed the harvest operation planned for the next planetary rotation. The transformation completed in that terrible moment of understanding. They were no longer boys who carried bags for credits. They became defenders of their people, their perspective shifting from personal survival to species preservation. The weight of their responsibility settled on them, not as burden but as purpose. Their bioluminescent patterns synchronized for the first time in their lives, pulsing with coordinated rhythm that signaled unified intention. They prepared to confront the human, using everything their mother had taught them, both the overt lessons about caution and the hidden training about combat. The armory doors slid open, revealing equipment far beyond standard civilian gear. Tactical displays lit up with intercept courses and engagement protocols. Their mother watched silently, her mandibles clicking approval as they moved with purpose she hadn't seen before. The brothers checked weapon systems with practiced efficiency, their movements coordinated without verbal communication. Power cells glowed as they seeded them into plasma rifles, the hum matching their synchronized bioluminescent patterns. Tactical displays showed the human ship maintaining orbit, its scanners still sweeping for targets. They had one planetary rotation before he would move on their cousin's hive. The youngest accessed environmental controls, preparing deception protocols that could mask their approach. The middle brother calculated intercept vectors that would use planetary gravity for maximum efficiency. The eldest tested body armor with powerful strikes that would have shattered standard equipment. They worked as a single unit, their individual strengths merging into something greater than their separate capabilities. The brothers broadcast their genetic signature from an abandoned processing facility, the signal pulsing through industrial ruins that smelled of stale chemicals and decay. They chose the location for its familiar layout, narrow corridors perfect for ambush, high catwalks offering tactical advantage, and plenty of shadowed alcoves for concealment. The youngest remembered playing here as a child, his knowledge of hidden passages and structural weaknesses becoming their strategic blueprint. Their biosignature glowed like a beacon on any corporate scanner, broadcasting exactly what the human wanted to acquire. He arrived with enhanced security this time. 6 cybernetically modified guards flanked him, their movements too precise, their eyes glowing with enhanced optics. Implants bulged along their spines and limbs, visible through tight combat suits. Their weapons were military-grade, their formation protective but arrogant. Predators often become careless when they believe they're hunting weakened prey, assuming compliance rather than resistance. The human strode through the main entrance like he owned the facility, his confidence radiating from every step. The brothers didn't fight with advanced technology. They used hive tactics older than corporations, movements coordinated through pheromone signals and subtle clicks. The eldest created a diversion by toppling rusted machinery, the crash echoing through the cavernous space. As the guards turned toward the sound, the middle brother released EMP bursts from modified maintenance tools. The devices were simple household tech, overcharged power cells from cleaning units, jury-rigged to emit electromagnetic pulses. The effects were immediate and devastating. Cybernetic implants sparked and smoked, guards clutching their heads as neural interfaces overloaded. Enhanced optics flickered and died, leaving them blind in the dim light. One guard's weapon systems overheated, the cooling vents hissing with emergency shutdown protocols. The brothers moved through the chaos like a single organism, their attacks perfectly synchronized without verbal communication. They struck joints and implant connections, using the guards' enhanced weight against them. Their supposed weakness became their greatest advantage. The human had expected frightened boys, easily controlled specimens still trembling from nanite exposure. Instead, he faced a coordinated unit that understood the terrain and his tactics. The brothers used their smaller size to slip through gaps in the guard formation, their knowledge of the facility to guide the fight into areas where technology failed. Rusted gratings gave way under cybernetic weight, old conveyor belts tangled augmented limbs, and unstable flooring collapsed under heavy combat boots. They cornered the human in the very cargo bay where this nightmare began. The same space where they'd loaded those terrible containers now became his prison. The brothers moved into position around him, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with coordinated rhythm. The human backed against a cargo loader, his eyes scanning for escape routes that no longer existed. His enhanced guards lay disabled throughout the facility, their systems fried by simple technology they'd considered beneath notice. The air smelled of ozone from the EMP bursts and the acidic scent of overheating cybernetics. The humans' flawless robes were now dusted with grime from the decaying facility, his perfect hair disheveled. He still reached for his concealed weapon, but the brothers were already aiming their modified tools at him. The cargo bay's emergency lighting flickered across his face, revealing the first cracks in his confident mask. He was trapped in the place where his operation began, outmaneuvered by the very specimens he considered property. Cornered against the cargo loader with plasma rifles aimed at his chest, the human's polished composure finally fractured. He raised his hand slowly, a grim smile twisting his mouth. "You think you understand what's happening here," he said, his voice losing its smooth cadence, taking on a raw, almost mechanical edge. "But you have no idea what you truly are to us." His fingers moved to his neck, pressing against a seam none of them had noticed. With a soft hiss, a section of artificial skin peeled back from his throat. Beneath the flawless human surface lay tissue that pulsed with soft blue bioluminescence, distinct Cathar biological patterning integrated with synthetic musculature. The brothers stared, their own patterns flaring in startled recognition. Exploiters often incorporate stolen elements into themselves, a parasitic existence that blurs the line between thief and victim. He was a hybrid creation, part human, part their own stolen genetic material. His eyes, once convincingly human, now glowed with the same light frequency as their own. "I am what you could become," he told them, his voice resonating with a dual-toned quality that echoed in the metal space. "Your species' biological gifts merged with human ambition. Evolutionary superiority." His offer to join the program wasn't recruitment, it was assimilation. He explained how his extended lifespan demanded constant replenishment. Fresh Cathar DNA wasn't a luxury. It was essential maintenance, a metabolic requirement to prevent cellular breakdown. Every few cycles, he needed new genetic material to stabilize his hybrid systems. Without it, his body would reject the modifications, aging decades in days. His wealth, his influence, his flawless appearance all depended on continuous harvesting. The terrible price of his longevity became clear. He lived as a prisoner of his own design, trapped in a cycle of consumption that demanded ever more from the very people he claimed to transcend. His freedom was an illusion, his power a dependency. He served the system not by choice but by biological necessity. The corporations controlled him through his need, their most successful product and their most loyal enforcer. He glanced at their horrified expressions and laughed, a sound that carried bitterness instead of triumph. "You think I'm the villain? I'm just the delivery system. The real disease is human hunger, and you're the medicine." As he spoke, his free hand activated a concealed emergency beacon on his wrist. No alarm sounded, no lights flashed, but the brothers felt the sudden surge of encrypted data pulsing through the local comm channels. The signal would reach the Xenogen fleet in high orbit, alerting them to his capture and their location. Backup was already en route, tactical teams prepared to secure high-value specimens by any means necessary. The human smiled, a genuine expression this time, edged with resignation. "They'll come for you now, and they don't make offers." His bio-enhanced eyes tracked their movements, calculating survival odds he already knew were unfavorable. The wealthy human stood revealed not as master of his destiny, but as another asset in the machine, his glamorous existence ultimately as constrained as the specimens he collected. Outside the facility, the first ships began breaking atmosphere. The roar of engines cut through the facility as a retrofitted mining vessel descended through the ruined ceiling. Its hull showed signs of hasty modification, welded armor plates, jury-rigged weapon mounts, and exposed conduits humming with excess power. Their mother stood in the open cargo bay, her posture transformed into something they'd never seen. She operated targeting systems with fluid precision, her claws moving across controls that should have required specialized training. She engaged the Xenogen security forces with startling tactical efficiency. Her combat style blended techniques from three distinct military traditions: the fluid movements of Cathar hive defenders, the calculated angles of human special operations, and the economic strikes of mercenary close-quarters combat. Each shot from her modified mining lasers struck with surgical accuracy, disabling ships without destroying them. Maternal protection instincts can trigger extraordinary capabilities, transforming ordinary individuals into formidable opponents when their offspring are threatened. She didn't attempt to destroy the human's ship. Instead, she deployed containment fields that wrapped around the vessel like energy webs, immobilizing it without causing structural damage. Her approach was methodical, professional. She captured rather than killed, preserving evidence and potential witnesses. While her weapons kept the security forces occupied, secondary systems collected everything: genetic samples from the human's exposed tissue, financial transaction records from his ship's computers, communication logs that showed his corporate connections. The human stared as she approached his disabled ship, his hybrid eyes wide with recognition. "You're supposed to be dead," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the fading combat noises. "The accident at the biofacility." She didn't respond, simply extended capture protocols that surrounded him in a stasis field. Her evidence collection was comprehensive, designed to withstand galactic court scrutiny. She gathered biological samples, financial records, even atmospheric recordings that captured his confession. Their mother wasn't just protecting her family. She was building a case against the entire system, gathering proof that could expose the longevity conspiracy at its highest levels. Each piece of evidence was tagged and secured with forensic precision. She moved through the disabled security forces, collecting weapons, scanning implants, documenting everything with the methodical approach of someone building a legal foundation, rather than simply winning a battle. As the remaining Xenogen forces retreated, breaking orbit to avoid capture, she made contact with other resistance cells. Her comm system lit up with encrypted channels, connections she'd maintained despite years in hiding. She spoke in coded phrases that hinted at deeper networks, her messages bouncing through relay stations across 3 sectors. The responses came quickly: acknowledgments from hidden groups, offers of support, coordinates for safe locations. The brothers watched their mother coordinate with forces they never knew existed. She discussed tactical positions, evidence handling procedures, and legal strategies with the confidence of someone who'd been planning this for cycles. Her transformation from protective parent to resistance leader was complete, every action revealing layers of preparation they'd never suspected. The mining vessel's systems hummed around her, their modified capabilities far beyond anything available to civilians. She secured the human in a specialized containment unit, its systems designed to prevent teleportation or external communication. The stasis field glowed with soft blue light, holding him motionless but conscious. Her claws moved across control panels, setting course for a rendezvous point that didn't appear on standard charts. The ship engines powered up, their vibration different from commercial drives, deeper, more powerful, with the unmistakable hum of military-grade systems. The facility fell away beneath them as they climbed through the atmosphere. Their mother monitored scanners for pursuit, while maintaining communication with her network. The brothers stood together in the command area, watching their world shrink below them. The simple job that started with carrying bags had become something much larger. Their family now part of a movement that stretched across star systems. The mining vessel moved into the blackness of space, its course set for places they'd only heard about in stories. The human's testimony cut through galactic politics like a plasma torch. His confession implicated senators from 3 core worlds and corporate leaders whose names appeared on public infrastructure and charity foundations. The evidence their mother gathered revealed longevity programs affecting 47 species across 12 sectors, each with their own version of sealed containers and generous payments. The operation spanned centuries, its roots reaching back to first contact between their species. Their simple job carrying bags had uncovered an interstellar conspiracy older than their great-grandparents. The tension hummed in the command center as data streams showed how deeply the corruption ran. Small actions often reveal large systems of oppression when properly investigated. Their decision to peek inside a container became the thread that unraveled an entire network of exploitation. The brothers watched star maps light up with incident, reports matching their experience, each glowing dot representing another species harvested for genetic material. The brothers became symbols of resistance almost overnight. Their images spread across encrypted networks, their story repeated in hive clusters that had lived in isolation for generations. Other Cathars saw their own experiences reflected in the tale of overpayment and suspicious job offers. The middle brothers' analysis of corporate patterns became training material for defense initiatives. The eldest's combat techniques were adopted by security forces. The youngest's empathy helped bridge communication gaps between formerly isolated groups. Their mother emerged as the strategic leader of a renewed Cathar defense initiative. Her knowledge of both their biology and corporate tactics made her the obvious choice to coordinate resistance efforts. She established communication protocols that allowed hive clusters to share information without corporate monitoring. Her modifications to standard security systems became standard installation across vulnerable communities. She spoke at emergency council meetings with an authority that silenced older, more traditional leaders. What began as a bag-carrying job sparked a galactic movement for genetic rights. The brothers found themselves at the center of something larger than their personal survival. They received offers of alliance from other exploited species within days of the evidence going public. The Borlans shared their experiences with mineral rights exploitation, their crystalline bodies mined for industrial applications. The aquatic Talarians described how their migration routes were disrupted by research vessels collecting tissue samples. Each new alliance brought additional evidence and specialized knowledge. The Borlans understood corporate financial structures better than any species, having fought mining contracts for generations. The Talarians had developed sophisticated sensor systems to detect unauthorized biological sampling. Their combined expertise created a comprehensive defense network that no single species could have built alone. The brothers coordinated between groups, their personal experience giving them credibility with each new contact. The movement grew faster than anyone anticipated. Within a solar cycle, over 30 species had joined the Genetic Rights Coalition. They shared detection methods, legal strategies, and security protocols. The brothers traveled to alliance meetings, their presence a reminder that change often started with ordinary individuals questioning unusual situations. Their mother remained at the command center, coordinating the larger strategy while they served as the public face of the resistance. The Humans Containment Unit remained active, his testimony continuing to provide valuable intelligence. Each revelation led to new investigations, more species coming forward with their experiences. The brothers monitored incoming communications, recognizing the same patterns repeating across different cultures. The wealthy always seemed to find ways to exploit the vulnerable, regardless of species or technology level. Their work had just begun, but the foundation was solid. The brothers walked through the command center, their steps heavier than before. Their perspective had shifted permanently, the weight of their experience settling into their posture. They realized the very traits their mother had often cautioned them about had become their salvation. Their curiosity about the container's contents, their suspicion of the humans' motives, their disobedience in opening the latch. These weren't flaws to be corrected, but instincts to be honed. The trauma they'd experienced accelerated their maturity, forcing them to grow beyond their years while complicating the normal development of adolescence. They now balanced training sessions with diplomatic briefings, their days divided between combat drills and interspecies communication protocols. Their bioluminescent patterns had permanently changed during the nanite cleansing. The soft blue, light shifting to a deeper indigo that pulsed with slower, more deliberate rhythms. The vibrant, spontaneous patterns of youth were gone, replaced by colors that reflected hard-won understanding and purpose. They trained not just as warriors learning plasma rifle maintenance and tactical maneuvers, but as diplomats studying galactic law and cultural sensitivity. The tension between normal adolescents and their new role as symbols of resistance manifested in small moments. The eldest would catch himself calculating escape routes during meals. The middle brother analyzed security protocols during relaxation periods, and the youngest scanned strangers for emotional tells in social situations. Trauma often complicates personal development, layering ordinary growth with extraordinary pressures. They missed the simplicity of worrying about minor clan disputes or personal ambitions, now burdened with concerns about species survival and galactic politics. Their training expanded to include investigative techniques, forensic accounting to trace corporate financial flows, genetic analysis to identify harvesting patterns, and intelligence gathering to monitor xenogen operations. They learned to operate scanning equipment that detected biological trafficking signatures and communication systems that intercepted corporate data streams. The boys who once carried bags for credits now carried the responsibility of protecting their people's genetic legacy. The transformation culminated in their establishment of the first interspecies youth coalition against genetic exploitation. They reached out to other young representatives from exploited species, sharing their experiences and developing coordinated response strategies. The coalition operated through encrypted channels, its members exchanging detection methods and safety protocols across star systems. They created early warning networks that could alert multiple species simultaneously when corporate harvesting vessels entered their sectors. The brothers found themselves mentoring others who had experienced similar encounters, their personal story serving as both cautionary tale and blueprint for resistance. They developed training materials that combined their mother's tactical knowledge with their own hard-earned insights, creating comprehensive guides for identifying and resisting genetic exploitation operations. The coalition grew rapidly, its members connected by shared experience and determined to prevent others from suffering their fate. They stood together watching the communication displays, the incoming messages from dozens of species glowing with urgency and hope. Their bioluminescent patterns synchronized in the dim light, the indigo pulses flowing in unified rhythm. The boys who carried bags had become men who carried their people's future, their personal transformation mirroring the larger change spreading across the galaxy. They prepared for the next coalition meeting, their notes filled with both tactical considerations and diplomatic phrases, balanced between the warrior and the negotiator they had become. The first signals came from the Borlan crystalline colonies, their transmission patterns humming across the comm systems with urgency. Then the Tellarian aquatic networks lit up with similar reports, followed by communications from a dozen other species. Each message carried the same story: wealthy visitors offering suspiciously high payments for simple work, containers that hummed with organic resonance, genetic markers disappearing from population databases. The Cathar case created legal precedent for interspecies genetic rights, their experience becoming the foundation for a new galactic protection framework. Powerful corporations retaliated with sophisticated media campaigns. News networks owned by Xenogen subsidiaries ran stories questioning the brothers' credibility, suggesting they had fabricated the entire incident for attention. Documentaries appeared questioning Cathar cultural practices, implying their species naturally produced unstable individuals. Systemic change often faces sophisticated counterattacks from established powers, and the brothers found themselves battling distorted narratives instead of physical threats. They watched their story get twisted into conspiracy theories and entertainment pieces, their painful experience reduced to speculation on talk shows. The brothers learned to use their celebrity strategically rather than seeking personal glory. They gave controlled interviews that focused on detection methods rather than dramatic retellings. They demonstrated scanning techniques that could identify biological trafficking signatures, taught communities how to analyze corporate financial patterns for exploitation markers, and shared protocols for securing genetic databases. Their painful lesson became protection for countless others as prevention systems spread across vulnerable sectors. They developed comprehensive detection methods that could identify genetic trafficking operations before they claimed victims. The systems analyzed shipping manifests for unusual container specifications, monitored financial transactions for patterns matching acquisition payments, and scanned communication networks for specific recruitment phrases. Their mother's technical expertise combined with the middle brothers' analytical skills created early warning networks that could alert entire sectors within minutes of suspicious activity. The mini payoff came when their systems detected a Xenogen operation targeting a remote Tellarian settlement. The early warning gave the community time to activate defenses and document the approach, capturing evidence that led to 3 corporate arrests. The brothers watched the successful intervention from their command center, their modified bioluminescent patterns pulsing with satisfaction. Their suffering had been transformed into functional protection, their experience converted into systems that could save others from the same violation. The transition came unexpectedly through encrypted channels. Messages began arriving from humans working within Xenogen's own research divisions. Ethical employees who had witnessed exploitation but feared retaliation reached out with information and offers of support. They provided internal documents, security protocols, and advance notice of corporate movements. These alliances provided crucial inside knowledge that complemented their external efforts, creating a comprehensive resistance network. The human defectors risked everything to share what they knew. They described the pressure to meet genetic acquisition quotas, the ethical compromises forced upon researchers, and the corporate culture that valued profit over species survival. Their information allowed the brothers to anticipate corporate tactics and develop more effective countermeasures. The alliance between exploited species and ethical humans created a powerful coalition that operated both inside and outside the corporate structure. The brothers integrated this new information into their existing systems, updating detection protocols with insider knowledge of corporate procedures. They established secure communication channels that allowed whistleblowers to share information without exposure, developing encryption methods that even Xenogen's advanced systems couldn't penetrate. The resistance movement grew stronger with each passing cycle, its foundations built on shared commitment rather than shared species. They received detailed schematics of corporate scanning technology, allowing them to develop better blocking systems. Internal financial records helped them trace shell companies more effectively. The ethical humans provided something beyond data. They provided perspective on how to fight the system from within, how to use corporate infrastructure against itself. The brothers began to understand that victory would require changing both external laws and internal corporate cultures. The movement solidified into a permanent coalition, its members connected by purpose rather than geography. The brothers coordinated between species and sympathetic humans, their command center humming with activity around the clock. They had started with 3 containers and a bad feeling, and built something that could protect billions. The ripple effect spread through the galaxy. Each prevented abduction, strengthening their resolve. The brothers stepped onto a human world for the first time, the air thick with perfumed atmosphere and the hum of luxury transports. They walked through districts where rejuvenation clinics glowed with promises of extended life, their windows displaying holograms of humans growing progressively younger. The wealth was visible everywhere. Polished surfaces, flawless complexions, elaborate fashions that shifted color with movement. But beneath the glittering surface, they detected the cost. Their enhanced senses picked up the subtle energy drains from longevity treatments, the environmental strain of supporting extended lifespans. They saw the distribution networks that funneled resources toward age extension, while basic services in outer districts crumbled. The tension hummed between what was displayed and what was hidden. Many humans they spoke with remained unaware their extended lives came from others' suffering, believing the treatments were synthesized or ethically sourced. Systems of exploitation often depend on consumer ignorance about product origins. The brothers initiated educational exchanges, showing humans the biological truth behind their rejuvenation. They projected holograms of Cathar genetic harvesting facilities alongside images of human longevity clinics, creating visual connections that couldn't be ignored. They shared sensory recordings, the hum of containment units, the scent of nutrient gel, the vibration patterns of stolen genetic material. Some humans voluntarily renounced treatments once they understood the source. They stood outside clinics holding signs that showed the real cost of extended life, their faces marked with the first signs of returning age. The brothers watched as wrinkles reappeared, hair grayed, movement slowed, and something remarkable happened. These humans gained a new respect from their communities, their willingness to embrace natural aging seen as courage rather than failure. The mini payoff came during a public forum, when a former corporate executive stood beside the brothers, her recently aged hands trembling slightly as she spoke. "I traded years for integrity," she told the crowd, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. "These extra decades cost more than credits. They cost my humanity." The brothers saw understanding dawn on faces throughout the audience, the realization that true wealth wasn't measured in years accumulated, but in relationships honored. They visited schools where children asked about their bioluminescent patterns, their questions innocent until the brothers explained what those patterns meant to harvesters. They spoke with researchers who had developed alternative longevity methods that didn't require exploitation, their work previously buried by corporate interests. They witnessed communities beginning to question not just where their treatments came from, but whether they needed them at all. The educational exchanges created ripple effects through human society. Some districts began celebrating natural aging as a mark of wisdom, rather than something to be erased. Artists created works exploring what it meant to live fully within natural lifespans. Medical researchers redirected efforts toward quality of life rather than mere extension. The brothers found themselves welcomed not as victims seeking justice, but as ambassadors offering wisdom. They returned home as something different than what they had been. Their indigo patterns pulsed with the rhythm of those who had faced hard truths and helped others do the same. The human worlds continued their struggle with the implications of what they'd learned, some embracing change while others resisted. The brothers carried that complexity with them, understanding that real change moves slowly, but begins with single moments of clarity. Their mother welcomed them back to the command center, her multifaceted eyes reflecting pride rather than concern. They had left as boys seeking credits and returned as men who understood that the galaxy's true wealth lay in mutual respect between species. The scanners still hummed with activity, detection systems still monitored for threats, but now they also tracked the growing network of humans who had chosen integrity over exploitation. Sometimes the simplest jobs carry the deepest consequences. 3 boys carrying bags uncovered a truth that shook the galaxy. Their ordinary action challenged corruption that stretched across star systems. Share this story with someone who needs reminding that change begins with questioning what seems routine. The galaxy transforms not only through epic battles but through quiet,